Good afternoon. My name is John Hammons, and welcome to my brief on cross-cultural communication. Why is learning to communicate in a global economy important? The simple reason is we all have different ways of communicating the same message that we're trying to get across to other people. The goal of this talk is to bring awareness to the topic and become more aware of the differences that we have in cross-cultural communication. By doing that, we can learn to communicate across cultures and languages effectively. Let's start with talking about common challenges in cross-cultural communication. What happens when, say, an English-speaking company buys out a company in Mexico or Japan? Mergers of companies happen every day, but adjusting to new languages and cultures can be difficult, especially if you're used to only speaking in your native tongue. It has been observed that in some cases, employees may feel less valuable if they don't speak a second language that their new host company speaks, even if they're good at their jobs. Or a person who is not proficient in English may avoid meetings, or conducting a meeting will revert to using their native tongue because it's comfortable and easy, which can cause issues with other people that don't speak their native tongue. Or an employee that speaks a different language may just avoid communicating with other employees altogether because they don't feel comfortable or want to talk to people because they find it difficult. And lacking in awareness of cultural differences can also cause conflicts within the company you work with, especially in the case of nonverbals, which we'll discuss in the next slide. Understand how each culture you work with may take your nonverbals differently is important. A common one among cultures is eye contact. Say you're having a conversation in a Western culture like America, you may maintain eye contact out of respect for the person you're speaking with. In cultures like Japan, which view direct eye contact as rude, they may view an American making eye contact with them excessively as rude, and they may be distracted by the conversation. Or if an American is having a conversation with a Japanese person who's avoiding their eye contact, they may also feel that the Japanese person they're talking with is rude. The same is true if you're having a conversation on a phone with a person from a different culture, who instead of saying yes or that I agree may give you a grunt, which you may not understand, but in their way they're saying yes or they understand what you're saying. Or another classic case is like in Western cultures we have, especially in America, what we call a personal bubble. And in different cultures, every one of them has a different comfort level of how close they can be to someone. In America, we like a little bit of space versus in countries like Korea or Spanish country like, say, South America, they may feel more comfortable being closer. And say you're in line with someone that's from a different culture, or you work with that person, you're waiting on something, and you're not aware that they don't have the same awareness of your nonverbals, say your personal proximity. You may find them as rude, but you may not understand that that's just part of their culture, and they don't understand your culture. So understanding these things will help you better communicate across a company you work with if it's a multinational company. And when the case of understanding nonverbals and how it affects culture and communication, some examples that I take from my prior research in the military that may be of benefit to you is when we would go to a new country, we would take a crash course in their culture and how they communicate, especially with nonverbals. So it's common in America when we go and meet someone, we shake their hand. But something we learned, like in the cultures of Japan, instead of shaking hands, they bow. And they do the same thing for this when they're saying thank you or leaving a store. I learned a quick lesson that after I left a store one time, I bowed really deeply to a store clerk, much to their amusement. And I didn't understand why they thought it was funny. But after the interaction, I asked my Japanese friends why the store clerk found it funny, and they basically said it's because you bow deeply, which they broke it down as that the deeper you bow, the more respect you're giving someone, which usually is only reserved for like a boss or like a parent. Which after that, I learned my lesson and I was more aware. I can also recall when I was working in Korea, I was supporting one of our aviation divisions there, and I was working with some Korean local nationals. And I remember I was speaking with them all day, and I really thought I had a productive conversation with them because they were nodding their heads, and and to me, it sounded like they were agreeing with what I was saying. Well, much to my surprise, the next day, a coworker of mine who was very fluent in the Korean language and cultures and customs said that they basically gave me some feedback and said I need to slow down when I speak to some of my Korean subordinates and people that I work with because since I'm their boss, out of respect for me, even if they don't understand what I'm saying, they're gonna nod. But the problem with that is if they don't understand what I'm trying to tell them, then they can't effectively do their job. And this helped me as long for like as I worked there to be aware of that and then also to slow down. And I think in both cases, having that feedback with people that are understanding of the culture helped me to adjust how I operate and something I learned as well is to try to bridge a gap is by practicing their culture, which I learned that the people there appreciated. And just like understanding cultural differences with nonverbals, having a better awareness of the different language and cultural differences will help you to better prepare a message that will reach all your employees from different countries that work within your company. For example, if you're an American, you may tend to be more direct in your message that you're giving to employees. But say you're speaking to a group of Japanese employees, they prefer a more direct way of speaking. Or knowing as well that Japanese culture as a whole tends to be more reserved, you may avoid animated hand gestures or word choices when you're talking so they are not offended or distracted. The same with word choices. Understanding that certain words in the English language don't translate or have different meanings when you give a talk helps you to make a message that's received more clearly across different languages and cultures. And then finally, as well as recognizing that in certain cultures, subordinates may not be as open or honest when speaking with your bosses, or they may say things to win their favor of their bosses, like say in the case of the example I gave earlier with my Korean counterparts. These things, understanding these differences will help you to communicate more effectively. Just because you know a foreign language, you may not have fully grasped the understanding of the culture and how that dictates how much that is a part of the language and how people within that culture communicate. A common one, for instance, is in Western cultures, we like to use slang or small talk to build rapport with people that we work with. And like say someone is from a different culture, they may not have that awareness even though they speak the language. And if we're interacting with them and not know that, we may think they're rude if they don't conduct with small talk with us. The same is true for word choice, body language, and customs can affect how your message is received, and having that awareness is very important. And the more aware you are of these things helps you to communicate better with your employees and coworkers who are from different cultures. And bridging the gap in communication starts by understanding and respecting someone's culture and their language, as well as communicating yours to the other person that's not from your culture. With understanding the different facets of the differences of culture, nonverbal communication, and communication as a whole between languages and cultures, now we'll discuss strategies that help you communicate across cultures within your multinational company. One of the things that has been found to help communication across different facets of a company that has businesses and offices in different countries is incorporating a single language policy. In addition, offering language classes to employees who don't speak the language that you're implementing has found greater buy-in, has been more receptive than just forcing someone to learn a new language within a company. In addition, just as I described, like we had in the military, companies that provide cultural awareness classes on the do's and don'ts help to promote a better cross-cultural communication across all their divisions. In addition, for managers and speakers leading a meeting or talk, knowing your audience and reformatting your message accordingly will help it be received and have a better payoff in the end. Just as we learned with, if you're speaking with Japanese employees, you're going to change the way that you're going to format that message because certain words and nonverbals they may not take well or they may not understand. And of course, another one that may have an additional benefit, like I gave the example of having friends that could break down the culture to me, is hiring a language or a culture specialist within your company that can help educate but also mediate problems that arise that are common with different cultures encountering one another within a business environment. And one of the biggest reasons that we already touched on is just because people may speak the same language, they may not understand another person's culture fully, which having a mediator there to kind of explain to people why someone's doing what they're doing will help them to better work together and have patience for one another. In closing today, we have covered the barriers in cross communication, differences in how cultures communicate, how to better become aware of cultural differences in communication, and strategies companies can use to promote more effective communication in their companies. Thank you for listening to my brief and have a wonderful day.